a registered letter landed in my mailbox one Tuesday morning, insisting I fork over $47 in penalties for residing in a home I'd owned for 12 years. The kicker, I wasn't part of their HOA. Imagine this: I'm in my kitchen, gripping a steaming coffee mug, gawking at legal documents that could have been scrawled in ancient hieroglyphs. Beyond my window, Karen Whitmore, the AOA's reigning queen, gestures at my house from her impeccably trimmed lawn, as if orchestrating a siege. Morning dew glistens on her grass, the kind you'd swear she measures with a ruler to meet neighborhood codes. My response. I took a sip of coffee and thought, Mom, you've just made the worst mistake of your life. What would you do if someone tried to drag you into an HOA you never signed up for? Share your craziest HO nightmare in the comments. I bet mine takes the cake. Also, where are you tuning in from? I'm dying to know how many of you are battling local tyrants right now. I'm Garrett Mitchell, and 12 years ago, I thought I'd secured my piece of the American dream. Turns out, I'd stepped into a nightmare crafted by a woman who makes autocrats seem reasonable. Back in 2011, fresh from 2 tours in Afghanistan, I used my VA loan to buy 2.3 acres of pure liberty. The 1970s ranch house sits on what was once the Hendricks farm, from a time before subdivisions, when this land was just fields and good sense. Willow Creek separates my property from the upscale Willowbrook estates. That gurgling stream reminds me daily that some boundaries are set by nature, not attorneys. I'm a self-employed contractor. Electrical, plumbing, anything to keep food on the table for me and my 16-year-old daughter, Emma. After my divorce, this place became our sanctuary. I built a workshop where the scent of pine sawdust blends with WD-40. Every morning, I breathe the air untainted by the chemical sprays of manicured subdivisions. Emma thrives here, with room to roam, a creek for catching tadpoles, and a dad who's home instead of overseas. Then entered Karen Whitmore, the embodiment of an HOA horror story. At 52, Karen drives a spotless white Lexus that's never touched mud and rules her $800,000 McMansion domain like a suburban Marie Antoinette wielding a tape measure. 6 years as HOA president have Hunter into a neighborhood watchdog, tracking everyone's trash day and lawn mowing habits. Her husband, Brad, isn't just along for the ride. He's the county planning commissioner, a fact that'll matter later as a glaring conflict of interest. Our first clash happened at my mailbox one Tuesday morning. Karen strutted over, pearls gleaming, clutching a clipboard like it was a grenade launcher. The gravel crunched under her pristine heels, announcing her arrival with the subtlety of a tank. Your workshop breaches community standards, she proclaimed, skipping pleasantries. I glanced at my property, then at hers across the creek, then back at her. Mom, I'm not in your HOA, I said politely. Her smile could have chilled my coffee. We'll see about that. That was 18 months ago. What followed was a textbook case of psychological warfare. Karen tracked my work hours with sniper-like precision, snapping photos of every visitor like she was compiling a dossier. She'd glare from her window whenever I used power tools, her disapproval radiating across the 47-foot creek. The woman bought binoculars. But Emma's 16th birthday party sent Karen over the edge. It was just a backyard barbecue, music off by 9:30 p.m., fully compliant with county noise laws. Karen called the cops twice. Both times, they found no issues and left, one even grabbing a burger, joking it was the calmest disturbance he'd seen all week. The next morning changed everything. Emma found a violation notice under my truck's wiper, printed on fancy legal paper that felt too official for such nonsense. It cited my workshop, garden fence, and gravel driveway as unapproved changes, each carrying a $500 fine. Dad, Emma said, eyeing the paper like it might explode, this woman's lost it. And here's what Karen banked on, that I'd cave like the other working class families she'd bullied into submission. Pay the fines, dismantle my workshop, and bow to her suburban regime. She'd mastered intimidation, but flunked basic research. If she'd checked county records, she'd have found something that could have saved us all 18 months of legal battles. My property was deliberately excluded from her HOA for reasons that would later dismantle her empire. But narcissists don't dig for facts, they just attack. I poured another coffee, stood at my fence, and stared across Willow Creek at Karen's flawless house, with its perfect lawn and corrupt roots. Laddie, I muttered to the air, you've picked a fight with the wrong veteran. The creek flowed on, oblivious to human drama, which was the perfect mindset for what was coming. 3 days after Emma's party, Karen fired her first shot with the precision of a suburban missile. A certified letter arrived because nothing screams, I'm serious, like forcing a signature for harassment. It wasn't a sloppy note. This was a glossy, professionally printed document that probably cost more than most phone bills. The paper felt luxurious, coated in that slick finish lawyers use to dress up nonsense. It listed violations straight out of a homeowner's nightmare: unpermitted workshop, non-compliant fence, unauthorized gravel driveway, and failure to meet community landscaping standards. Each carried a $500 fine with 30 days to comply or face liens and lawsuits. I had to respect Karen's flair for bureaucratic bullying. Too bad she overlooked one key detail. My first move was the county courthouse, where the dusty scent of old records and legal battles hung heavy. Dorothy, a seasoned clerk who'd seen every property dispute under the sun, helped me unearth my 1970 deed. In Afghanistan, our intel officer preached, always check primary sources, secondary ones lie. That wisdom applies to property law as much as to dodging explosives. The deed was clear: my boundaries, surveyed and recorded, predated Willowbrook Estates by 40 years. Measurements confirmed I was 47 feet outside HOA control, separated by Willow Creek and protected by natural boundary law. To be sure, I called the HOA management company. After 3 holds, a baffled receptionist admitted they had no record of my address. "Sir, if you're not in our system, you're not in our HOA," she said, like explaining addition to a toddler. But Karen wasn't one for reality. 2 days later, she showed up with backup. Her brother-in-law, Rick, a part-time surveyor whose credentials seemed limited to an orange vest and a tape measure. The stench of Rick's budget cologne mixed with Karen's desperation as they stood on my porch, spouting gibberish about creek migration and boundary reassessments. Karen's first big mistake, claiming the creek had shifted and demanding access to redraw property lines. "Mom," I said, holding up my certified survey, "water doesn't rewrite laws." Her face turned crimson. "My lawyer will decide that," she snapped. But her fatal error was revealing her legal plans before checking her facts. While she played boundary cop, I uncovered something explosive about Willowbrook Estate's origins. Mrs. Patterson, my 83-year-old neighbor who remembered when this land was pastures, invited me for coffee and gossip that could win court cases. Her kitchen smelled of vanilla and vindication as she spilled the truth. "Funny thing," she said, stirring her coffee with the care of someone who'd outlasted 3 HOA presidents. "The original plans clearly excluded your property for environmental reasons. Something about the creek's flood zone." She leaned in, whispering, "But Brad, Karen's husband, pushed the approval through anyway. His company built 60% of those houses." The puzzle pieces snapped together. My army instincts kicked in: exploit the enemy's patterns. The next violation notice arrived a week later, claiming my property was a nuisance, harming community values. Karen had upped the ante from fines to threats of liens and foreclosure. She'd hired Pembroke and Associates, a law firm that thrives on intimidation and billboard ads. But her bullying backfired. She'd sparked a rebellion. The Kowalski family cornered me in the grocery store, whispering like revolutionaries among the apples. They'd been forced to remove their kid's swing set for aesthetic violations, costing them $8,000. Mrs. Patterson mentioned the Rodriguez family, driven out after Karen harassed them to the point of calling their employer. A pattern emerged: Karen targeted working families who couldn't afford long legal fights, while ignoring richer neighbors' violations. The irony: her pricey legal moves were building my case. Every call, every threat, every surveillance attempt was documented. The creek flowed on, unmoved by her schemes, marking a boundary her lawyers couldn't touch. Karen thought she was fighting a simple dispute. She didn't know she'd handed me the tools to topple her empire. Karen's next move was as subtle as a sledgehammer wrapped in legal jargon. 2 weeks after my courthouse trip, a hefty envelope from Pembroke and Associates arrived, reeking of expensive intimidation. The 4-page cease and desist letter was a legal drama masterpiece, demanding I halt all unauthorized activities and submit to HOA authority. It claimed my property was a continuing nuisance, hurting home values, and insisted I allow them to place boundary markers on my land. The nerve! She wanted to trespass to prove I was trespassing. In the Army, we called this paperwork escalation: bury the enemy in official nonsense until they surrender from exhaustion. My counter was sharp and precise. I hired Janet Reeves, a local attorney who specialized in veterans' rights and devoured bullies for breakfast. Janet read Karen's letter and laughed aloud, a rare reaction for pricey lawyers. "Garrett," she said, her office smelling of leather books and righteous fury, "this woman just wrapped a harassment case." Janet's counter letter was a legal gem, citing property rights, harassment laws, and warning that further contact would trigger immediate action. It also noted that demanding access to my land was attempted trespass. Karen's response was predictably wild. She called an emergency OA meeting, turning the community center into a stage for her property value panic. She presented charts claiming my illegal business was tanking home equity. True, I used my workshop for contract jobs, but Karen didn't grasp small business law. My home-based work was fully licensed, zoned, and insured. Facts didn't stop her propaganda. Her whisper campaign spread lies about an unlicensed contractor, endangering kids. She rallied neighbors against me, but her pressure tactics backfired. County code enforcement visited after anonymous complaints. Inspector Phillips, clearly tired of the game, confirmed my setup was legal. Your place is cleaner than most commercial sites, he said off record, packing up his clipboard. Whoever's filing these is wasting everyone's time. But Karen's surveillance escalated. My security cameras caught Rick sneaking around at dawn, placing fake survey stakes to make my workshop look like it crossed HOA lines. When I confronted him, he mumbled about preliminary measurements and bolted. Emma started feeling unsafe at her bus stop, noticing Karen's surveillance drives timed with her schedule. One morning, Karen was parked at the creek bridge, snapping photos with a telephoto lens like a suburban spy. Dad, this is creepy, Emma said over breakfast, her voice sharp with unease. That's when I knew Karen had crossed into intimidation. My old sergeant's advice rang true: document everything. Crazy people expose themselves with enough rope. Karen was knotting her own noose. The Willowbrook Neighbors Facebook group became a battleground of clashing stories. Karen's allies posted about property values, while others shared their own horror tales. Mrs. Patterson revealed she'd recorded Karen's meetings for years, just in case. Honey, she said, pouring tea with steady hands, I've got tapes that make your hair curl. Karen hadn't just picked a fight with me. She'd taken on the neighborhood's collective memory. Her nuclear option arrived on a Thursday with a sheriff's deputy serving a $47,000 lawsuit. The complaint was a legal fever dream, claiming I'd agreed to HOA membership by owning property near her subdivision. It demanded compliance, an injunction against modifications, and legal fees that could buy a car. In Janet's office, sunlight streaming through windows that had seen countless disputes, her expression shifted from concern to fury. Garrett, she said, flipping through Karen's fiction, this is either delusion or the prissiest bluff in county history. Janet's research revealed Karen's predatory pattern: 6 boundary disputes in a decade, 3 families driven out by legal costs. The Rodriguez family lost their home to foreclosure after mounting fees. Karen targeted working-class families who couldn't fight back, sparing wealthier neighbors. Her media campaign was a coordinated assault, feeding local news stories about a property value crisis. She posed for photos, pointing at my workshop like it was a biohazard. Channel 7 ran a story, HOA battle divides neighborhood, quoting Karen's claim I was unavailable. Though no one contacted me. Her media stunt backfired. Emma's friend Madison, our teenage spy, overheard Karen at her book club, bragging about getting rid of that contractor. Recorded on Madison's phone, it revealed Karen's vendetta wasn't about values. It was personal. Sabotage followed. Roofing nails littered my driveway, puncturing my truck's tires. Emma's car was keyed at school, with "Move" scratched into the door. Anonymous flyers warned of my dangerous electrical work, listing my business number for complaints. The state found no violations, but my business lost 30% of its income as clients bailed. One evening, I caught Karen with binoculars, logging my schedule. She didn't flinch, just scribbled on her clipboard and drove off. Her psychological warfare was meant to break me, but she didn't know combat stress. Compared to Afghanistan, this was amateur hour. Janet's breakthrough came from 2009 county documents recommending my property's exclusion due to flood zone rules. Brad, as commissioner, knew this but ignored it. This wasn't a dispute, it was fraud and conspiracy. The creek flowed, washing away Karen's lies. The game changer came from a musty courthouse basement. Sarah, Janet's paralegal, found a 2009 environmental study explicitly excluding my property, Parcel 47B, for ecological reasons. A handwritten note confirmed Brad was warned about EPA violations. Worse, the HOA's incorporation papers included a forged signature from Robert Riss, dead 6 months before the notarization. Karen's McMansion was sinking in debt, her harassment propping up property values to avoid foreclosure. Mrs. Patterson's recording sealed it. In March 2022, Karen admitted, that contractor's property isn't in our jurisdiction, but he'll never fight us. Working people can't afford lawyers. Another tape revealed her plan to bury him in legal fees. She'd run a suburban racket, targeting families who couldn't resist. Brad's company built 60% of Willowbrook's homes, sold at inflated prices based on a fraudulent HOA. Every fine was extortion. In Janet's office, surrounded by evidence, I realized this was a criminal conspiracy. The question wasn't winning. It was whether to destroy Karen and Brad or seek justice. Emma's keyed car answered that. Our war council met in my workshop, coffee and sawdust fueling our fight. Janet laid out legal documents, Mrs. Patterson brought strong coffee, and the Kowalskis and Rodriguez joined us. Emma took notes like it was her life's mission. Janet's plan dismissed Karen's lawsuit for fraudulent incorporation, countersue for harassment and conspiracy, and seek an injunction to halt HOA fees. Mrs. Patterson's tapes, authenticated by a stenographer, exposed Karen's targeting of working families. My cameras caught Rick's fake stakes, proving fraud. Madison's recording of Karen's book club confirmed her vendetta. Our media strategy involved Sarah Morgan, an investigative reporter. A surveyor and environmental engineer validated our claims. While a handwriting expert proved the forgery, auditors found Karen misappropriated HA funds for her legal battles. Neighbors reported Brad shredding documents, and Karen's lawyers hinted at dropping her. I ordered construction supplies, signaling a workshop expansion to spike Karen's stress. Support grew. Unions, veterans, and environmental groups backed us. 3 HOA board members offered to testify against Karen. Her secrecy violated transparency laws giving residents rights to financial records. By Sunday, my workshop was a legal hub, evidence boxes stacked high. Emma predicted Karen's jail time. The creek approved, flowing toward her downfall. Karen's Tuesday evening visit reeked of desperation. "Let's settle like adults," she said, offering $15,000 to end the misunderstanding. I leaned against my doorframe. "I don't negotiate with extortionists." Her smile cracked. "You'll regret this, Mr. Mitchell." Her warfare turned personal, with anonymous posts smearing my military service, claiming I was a PTSD-riddled threat. Sabotage escalated. My workshop's power line was cut, risking a fire. Nails littered our driveway, and Emma's car was vandalized. Karen's, concerned citizen, calls cost me 40% of my business. She watched us with professional surveillance gear, unashamed when caught. Brad burned documents, and Madison reported their household chaos. Karen's desperation was building our case. The county hearing was her last stand. She arrived with a consultant and a PowerPoint of lies, claiming my workshop threatened kids. Emma and Madison recorded. Mrs. Patterson rallied witnesses, and Sarah Morgan's photographer turned it into a spectacle. Karen's emotional plea about family values crumbled when the county engineer questioned her creek claims. My response was factual. 1970 deed, 47, foot buffer, 2009 exclusion study. Patterson's tapes played Karen admitting to targeting families. The handwriting expert proved the forgery, and the environmental engineer exposed creek damage. The HOA management company dropped Willowbrook for financial irregularities. Karen's meltdown was epic, screaming about conspiracies as security escorted her out. The commission ruled the HOA fraudulent, voiding all actions and referring Karen for criminal charges. Outside, Sarah Morgan interviewed me while Karen ranted. The neighborhood celebrated, fines nullified, and restitution began. Brad was suspended, and Karen's house hit the market. Mrs. Patterson's barbecue marked the victory. 6 months later, Karen and Brad faced felony charges: fraud, conspiracy, harassment, forgery. Karen got 18 months probation, restitution, creek cleanup, and an HOA ban. Brad lost his job and company. My settlement funded Emma's college. Willowbrook became a voluntary association under Mrs. Patterson, hosting environmental festivals. Wildlife returned to the creek, and Sarah Morgan's expose sparked the Willowbrook Act for HOA oversight. Janet now fights HOA fraud, and Emma testifies for reform. Karen's McMansion foreclosed, and she lives in a small apartment, avoiding her old kingdom. Our Property Rights Day celebrates community over control. Emma's nonprofit, Free the Neighborhoods, launches soon. The creek glows at sunset, kids laugh, and neighbors thrive without rulers measuring grass. Share your HO horror stories below. Have you fought a tyrant? Hit subscribe for more takedowns, like next week's story of a teacher exposing an HOA president's $200,000 embezzlement. Bullies thrive on silence, so let's expose them together.